Hello and welcome. It's Gary Watson, the Geezer at the Geezerville Chronicles. It's currently Saturday, May 3rd, and I decided to make this post today because someone I have admired for all of my last 40 years of life has just made a significant announcement today, and I wanted to make some comments regarding that. The person that I'm talking about is Warren Buffett, and every year he has an annual meeting that people from all over the world come to attend, and this year was no exception. And I'm going to talk about just 2 or 3 of the subjects he talked about and hopefully add a little bit of perspective on those and that I can share as to the critical nature of why everyone should think about what just happened in this moment when he decided to retire. And also he made that dramatic announcement without anybody but his 2 kids knowing that, who are on the board, knowing that he was going to do so. And it was during the last 5 minutes of his presentation. And he received a standing ovation from the crowd that was remarkable. And you got to understand, these meetings have worldwide reach. So just a lot of who's who were there and a lot of other people from all around the world. And the thing that drew not only that announcement into kind of a celebration of life almost, because he's been at the head of Berkshire for 60 years, after 60 years of work. And it's one of the most highly regarded companies in the world. And it's based on reputation, the reputation and the culture that Warren has been instrumental in creating over these many, many years. But when he said at the end, I have no intention of selling 1 share of my stock in Berkshire Hathaway, that was a pivoting moment for not only the crowd, but the industry in general. Because he's leaving all of his money other than what he donates in the company because he believes in it. And you got to know, Berkshire is 94 years old. And so I enjoyed his celebration as he said that, because he has his 2 traditional cans of Coca-Cola, original Coke, sitting in front of him on the podium, or on the table, I should say, and a box of C's Candies on his, would have been on his right side. So that was his announcement. But as always, Berkshire has stood for America, and the greatest moments that he has felt fortunate to participate in his last 60 years. I found a couple of things, though, that I wanted to add a little more insight into. And I'll tell you right away what they were. One was his statement on the trade situation and tariffs, because it was an honest statement, something that we're lacking on C Street, that's the CEO streets around the country in general, with few exceptions. But he told it like it is. and which has been his tradition. And the second thing is a little more subtle, but I think is really significant. I don't care whether you invest in the stock market or not. I think it's important that you know about this and appreciate its context. And in that regard, he made, in the last year or so, he invested heavily after many years. He added two at least. His investment in 5 of the largest Japanese trading companies. And we're going to go into that in a little more detail in a few minutes because it's significant to the first subject, which has to do with trade. And it's significant to the last subject I'll touch on at the very end, which is the fact that whatever happens in the future, from this point on, in the course of the United States of America, just know that we've all done it to ourselves. So that's what you're going to hear. Okay, let's take on the first topic, which was trade. Buffett really made a statement that I've actually heard, and that's actually been attributed to him before, which is he thinks that tariffs are basically a form of warfare. Warfare, in case you didn't hear what I said. But I think to really appreciate that, I spoke to this in a podcast that was issued maybe a week ago, that was called Liberation Day, and I offered it as a special edition of the Geezerville Chronicles. And I talk about a perspective on trade, and I make the point there, and I'll reiterate the point. Buffett said that, it's kind of a cheesy thing to do, to be the greatest economy in the world, and then all of a sudden disrupt the entire world with a slapped-on set of tariffs that make no sense to anyone, and then say, looky, looky, we won and we can do this now. I can't think of a more immature action that our president of the United States could have made. It makes absolutely no sense. And what he's done is just tarnished our reputation that we'll never get it back in the next 2 or 3 decades. And America, we've done it to ourselves. We elected this guy, and we're seeing the results of it, and we're just beginning to see the results of it. So I won't go off on that handle as much as the next point I wanted to talk about, which is this. One of the strategic things that Warren Buffett started doing in his company over 2 years ago, and I don't know all the reasons why. I don't have any inside information. I should say I'm an investor in the company, but he started raising capital. I mean, he started selling some of the public shares he owns in other companies, and he raised positions in capital. He now is sitting on, the company is now sitting on probably near $350 billion in cash. And that was one thing. But the other thing that was probably missed, and people, like me, didn't really appreciate until we gave it some more thought. And that was he increased positions that he had been building in 5 Japanese companies. And these are trading companies. And I want to reiterate some of the points that he made during this annual meeting, which can be viewed by anyone on YouTube. And I'll put the link in the summary of my video here below. But I want to go over those. And I'll begin by talking about the 5 trading companies. Who are they? How do those trading companies fit in to the Japanese and the global economy as a second point? And then the third point is why and what he saw that was valuable in those companies in the long run. And he's declared that as far as he can see for the next 50 years, he'll keep those positions in those companies. So you might want to stick around for this last bit of commentary on that investment decision. Okay, I want to delve into the second point. Now, I could spend a whole video on what trading companies are and the keiretsus that they're connected to and the significance of that, but it's a very complicated subject. So I'll just kind of gloss over a few of the highlights. A keiretsu is like a conglomerate, is the closest thing I can. It's like a web of companies that are all interconnected through long-term relationships that work on a cooperative scale. They can be in all different kinds of businesses, but if you're within the keiretsu and you need banking and there's a company in your keiretsu, you go to that bank. If you need a company to ship or export, you go to the export company in that keiretsu. So these 5 companies, who are they? Well, 3 of them you know, Sumitomo, Mitsui, and Mitsubishi, and they're also trading companies, and they're the main honchos in each of those keiretsus. The other 2, I'm not familiar with the last one, but the one that Warren talked about, I am familiar with, and it's really not a keiretsu. It acts more independently, but he chose to invest in it, and it's called Itochu. Itochu is run by, it has a history of a particular idea that I can only imagine that Warren was attracted to when he decided to commit resources into these companies and do it over the long term. He has no intention. I mean, he's looking 50 years ahead, and he sees the global markets and what's happening in the world, and he's making the investments now. And he's doing it because he truly believes it's in the best interests. Well, what does Warren look at when he invests in a company? Of course, there are many things, but it never takes him a long time to make a decision or to act on it when he decides. He doesn't act often, but when he does, it's because he believes it's a good business. It's a good business to be in, and that's the intrinsic value that he wants to make the investment in. So he did this with Itochu. And if you know anything about that company, you know that it's committed to a particular philosophy. And that philosophy is that people are the capital of the company. And I'm going to read you a line in there that I think is important. And it's like, Itochu has long emphasized human capital as its most important asset, with a corporate culture that values well-being, empowerment, and long-term development. There's a strong emphasis on employee satisfaction and mental health, and investment in training and education, and investment and encouragement of employee autonomy, and of shorter work hours, which all of those 5 things create a loyalty in the employee base that's committed over the long term. And I think that's one of the things that caught Mr. Buffett's eye. This is a good company, and I'm going to invest in it because I know that those long-term relationships will provide me with a seed corn that I need to grow and find other opportunities on behalf of the shareholders over the long term in Berkshire Hathaway. And that's what really motivated him. I can tell you a story. And back in the 80s, I was on spent a lot of time in Japan. And to cut to the chase, I went to a company, Toyota Forklift, and they had just unleashed automated robotic vehicles in their manufacturing plant because Toyota was the inventor of mass production of a variety of things, not just a Henry Ford model, which is one Ford after another, the same model. So Toyota invented that principle of manufacturing. And one of the things that's really important is being able to bring all of the materials just in time to the manufacturing line for a given model that happens to be being assembled. Well, when these automated vehicles went online, it put a lot of people's job at risk within the company. And of course, they saw this coming. And so they followed up and invested in bringing those companies, trying to figure out what those resources that had committed themselves to the company, what those resources could, with encouragement, bring future value to the company. What a novel concept, huh? They just didn't put them out on the streets. I mean, if you just read last week, of the Magnificent Seven companies, that would be Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Google, Nvidia, and Tesla. I did it. 7 companies. Okay. Of those 7 companies, 3 of them, and let me look at my notes, but 3 of them talked about the demand right now for coding, meaning programming code for critical operations within the company, right? And they announced some remarkable things. This was only last week. There are 3 of those companies. Let's take Microsoft. Microsoft now writes 20 to 30% of its code in some of their projects, with the expectations for this percentage to grow. The company has formed a new AI engineering core group. And what that really translates to me, and they're pruning their best and their brightest people to work in tandem with AI to produce their code. And there will be tremendous productivity benefits. The same said Mark Zuckerberg last week for Meta. He announced plans to replace mid-level engineers with AI-generated systems by 2025. That's this year. And suggesting that AI could handle half of the company's development work, half, within a year. And Alphabet, the CEO, Sundar Pichai, he stated that over 30% of new code at Google is now AI generated, an increase from 25% in October. So they're on an escalating sale. The same is true of Amazon. Their AWS services group within Amazon announced that they're going to reduce their need for code developers. Okay, so what does all this mean? Well, it means that, like Mustafa Suleyman, who wrote this book, The Coming Wave, he now works at Microsoft. He heads their AI enterprise development. Okay, this book will be referenced in below, as I've said, and in this book, you can see the future. It's called The Coming Wave, and it's really a tsunami. And that tsunami is going to hit us. And those jobs are going to be displaced. So now, what is our systematic strategy? If you allude back to companies that I referred to in Japan, what is our strategy for retooling, for reusing that resource? Are we just going to throw it in the gutter? One of the things I've always admired about Warren Buffett is his willingness to stand up and say what he thought. But to do so, he has a certain humility about him. He always has. He's more soft-spoken. He's a long-time believer in America. And he knows that what it means to come from having nothing as a country 250 years ago to being the envy of the world in only 250 years. And anybody that's ever made a contribution to their community or to their company or to this country knows that we don't live in a perfect world. We don't live in a place where everything works without any friction. But we have some serious issues. And I encourage you to take a few minutes and listen to this person who's 94 years old now. And he knows what's important. He knows what his heart tells him. He's both intellectually and emotionally intelligent. And he's humble. And he believes that this too shall pass. I'll leave you with that. Because hope is something that we all need. And hope is something we make, and we make it together. And that takes conversation. That's all for now. Every day is special, and it's your turn to make some hope and share it with somebody else. Thanks a bunch.